pass from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty.
Time for the main course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big
That's
entree.
it. We've had our entree, main course. Australia versus Argentina up in McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle this weekend. Harry, why don't you take us through who's returning? And Nelson, you can take us through the bookies. Actually, while we're on that, how did your punts go last week, mate? Did you bet on Argentina or?
I decided not to bet on it, and then I was sitting there watching the game in disbelief with a few Kiwis around me, and they were all going, "We're done. We're going to lose." And I'm like, "Nah, all the Kiwis aren't back in it, but I'm going to ride home the All Blacks. They're paying good money, to score a couple of tries at the back end of the game, and they lost. So I mean, I am clearly betting on the All Blacks on every time that in every match they verse the Wallabies from now on in. Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row I've bet on them, and it's the first time that they've lost.
We're really
since 2011.
If someone rang and called you and said, "How much would you pay for the All Blacks to lose?" I mean, we'd all empty our bank accounts, really. So we should just continue this as a strategy. But sorry, Harry, can you take us through who's returning for the Wallabies?
Yeah, I mean, James O'Connor's the obvious one that's kind of on the forefront of everyone's mind after we had to use Hodge as a fill-in last week. Obviously,
a brilliant fill-in
away from his performance, which is very, very good. But I hear he's still battling a knee injury. I don't think it's completely confirmed. Although there was word that he was rumored to be close last game. So you would expect that he comes back from his MCL injury and slots straight in at 10. Anyone want to disagree with that?
Look, I don't want to disagree. I think, if you were Hodge, this game is going to be really important that, the kicking game and field position, he'd be thinking he's in for a chance for this one with his kick and how he played in that last match. But, look, I think you're more likely to see James O'Connor, but there's still a small chance you see Hodge.
And the line on this one, I don't think there's any other players coming back. Sorry, just to round that out. But
sorry, the big one there was Lukan Salakaia-Lotto. We don't think will be back.
Maybe for the last game, so a few weeks away. So yeah, he won't be back this week. No way.
Yep.
The bookies have the Wallabies at $1.55 to win by 5 points or more.
Bold.
That just seems like it's way too short. And to me, that just says that the bookies don't think the Argies can back it up. There's always that big question about how does a team back up such an emotional win, such an emotional high? And that's going to be the biggest questions for the question for the Argentinian team in this game. If they roll out and play like they did on the weekend, I think the Wallabies are in huge, huge trouble. But you could see how much it meant to them, and it's going to be hard to come back from that.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, folks.
I was going to say, here's to hoping that they've played their World Cup final, mate.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is going to prove whether they're the real deal or not. I think for me, there's the Aussie coach and the forwards coach from Australia. Only last year they're now in charge of Argentina, and they've got a chance to go back to back, beat New Zealand and Australia, and have a real crack at winning this rugby championship. Surely the passion can't be lacking. It's just whether, they're too drained physically and mentally coming into this week. We've had a couple of weeks off. I don't think, we've been planning for what they showed for the last week prior to watching that. But, we're going to be primed and ready to go as well.
It'll be interesting to see if Michael Checker's still there this week. And the other reason I say that is, as a very proud Australian, Checker did once say he would never coach any team against Australia. And the only reason that he has joined the Argies is because it was called in as a personal favour from close friend Mario Ledesma. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's up there in the coaching box next week, but sure he'll find it difficult.
He will be, and apparently they've already said that he's allowed to sing the Wallabies or the Australian national anthem during that point of time. So, yeah, he's going to be in there singing for Australia in the Argentinian box.
Pretty awesome.
It's going to be a weird experience.
Yeah, massively.
He's just holding down a direct radio to the Wallabies from the whole Argentinian box room.
I'm sorry. So I guess a few big things for me here. The biggest, most obvious question staring the Wallabies in the face in this game is an Argentinian team that just completely bullied a New Zealand side And let's be honest, the Australian team is lacking some physicality. Losing Lokan Salakai Loto is going to be big. What are the Wallabies? How do we get around this? Personnel changes, tactics. What do you guys think?
Look, I think the tactic's been right. The last couple of matches, we send Swinton out to do a job. We've sent other guys out to do a job. Lucan Salotto was one of those guys as well. But I don't know who the personnel is to do it. I think we're chatting. Sorry.
Well, it's not those guys.
Yeah, it's definitely not those. But, I don't think the game plan needs to change in terms of that. We've been going out similar, trying to make that contact high and hold the play up and be very physically dominant in attack to slow down New Zealand. We're going to need to do the same thing in defence here and try to win that physicality battle. But, we've lost our two most physical forwards.
I guess that's a great point. The two questions really that come here are, New Zealand has really struggled against the rush defence. So have we. So what can we learn from New Zealand's performance and how are we going to deal with that? That will be my first question that I'll pose to both of you. And my second question would be, do Argentina go into this game changing anything about their strategy? Obviously, it would be very easy to say that strategy works wonders. We beat the All Blacks with it. Australia and New Zealand are fairly similar size in the way they play. Is there anything that I'll answer this question first, I suppose. Is there anything that you can think of that Argentina would likely want to adapt to playing the Wallabies from their game plan last week? To answer, I don't think so, but what do you guys think?
No, not at all. I'll
so.
answer the other part after, but I don't think they need to change a single thing. Try and bash the hell out of us, win the line out, try and push us around at scrum time. I think they'll do the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I think we've actually looked, with that pressure on our inside. As soon as we lost James O'Connor and Tamua, that combo, we've really struggled with that line speed and people coming in and shutting down our 10 channel there. So, if it's Paisami at 12 and they're shooting in and shutting it down in there, I don't think he's got the ability to stop that in terms of his pass and chip, as, we've seen with Tamua there, or we might even see if James O'Connor was 12 or Hodge was there. So it really depends for the Wallabies in terms of their personnel that they're going to pick there. But I don't think Argentina need to change anything.
I don't think that can be how the Wallabies go about it, Nels. I think the only way that we can win against that kind of attack is that Nick White becomes even more important. His boxing game becomes absolute massive, but also the Wallabies players like Taniela Tupou, Alan Alatoa, Harry Wilson. I think Issy Nasserani's a no-brainer. Bring him in at 8 and put Wilson at 6. I think we need to use those big bodies playing off 9 and snooping around the ruck to try and get through, to try and put them on the back foot. I think that's the way that a Wallabies team has to play against that kind of stuff.
To punch it up real tight, we're going to have to force them to bring them in from the field.
Yeah, I think that's how you start the game. You start playing off that 9 and show you're willing to just truck guys up through that channel there. And then that's when you've got to have, whether it's James O'Connor or whoever else, sitting in behind the line as an option to pick and choose when they're going to go wide. But I do agree with that. I think that's a good point. They just need to, suck it in tight and just truck it up that centre with their bigger bodies early on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think... look, from the last game against the All Blacks, there was one line break in for each team, for the RGs and the All Blacks. So you're right, they've got to change something. If the Argentina's going to come out and defend the same way, just fill that field, not commit to rucks, you've got to change something to create space. The All Blacks were struggling to find any space and generate any momentum and go forward. So I think we're going to have to, there's no other option other than trucking it up in tight, a little bit uncreative. Nick White is going to become our most pivotal player for this game.
You've got to find a way to get past that advantage line so their defenders are moving back. Something that the All Blacks did not manage to do very much in that game whatsoever. But you saw, they did 5-6 hit-ups, ended up, behind the advantage line, and then just kicking the ball away aimlessly to Argentina on a number of occasions. We've got to look to actually do offensive kicks and plan our kicks and not make it, a last resort, which we saw New Zealand do a few occasions on the weekend.
Great. All right. Well, look, let's do it. Let's go through a bit of the Wallabies lineup, just the big questions. There's a few players that I think we'll all agree on to pick themselves. The big questions for mine, the front row. No James Slipper, done his shoulder, he's out. For mine, it's got to be Scott Seo if he's fit. No, sorry, Scott Seo's not fit, is he?
Yeah, he's fit.
He's fit? Oh, sorry, okay. Scott Seo. Yeah, so Seo's got to come in and start, I would say, with Angus Bell off the bench. I know Bell was impressive at the end of that game against the All Blacks, but for mine, I would still be starting Scotty Seo, bringing on Angus Bell.
100%.
Yep, you guys with that? All right, and then, again, the big question we talk about every week, Alatoa and Tupou. Look, that's a really difficult one, but I would keep the same. Alatoa to start, Tupou off the bench.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. The back row, Harry's already smashed that one. I think we will all definitely all agree that probably our strongest foot forward would be Nazarani and Wilson. Is there anyone else that even competes really? Like the only other person you could think of in terms of physicality might be Valentini. But look, I think if we agree on Harry Wilson, Nazarani needs to be those two in the back row, who's the backup then? Do we go for a Valentini to bring on a bit more impact? Or do we go for Liam Wright to bring on, just someone to kind of settle it down a bit more?
Let's just remember that we also have Rob Simmons starting. So they're going to want someone that can play that lock as well, I think.
Ted Flanagan on the bench is what you're saying? Or
I mean, it's not what I want, but I think it will be, yeah.
Well, will he be the bench lock or the bench back rower?
I don't think they'll play both, will they?
No, they did last time out. They had him on the bench as a lock, and then they still had a bench back rower.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So assuming we have a bench back rower, who would you guys be picking? Liam Wright, Rob Valentini, or Pete Samu?
I think you'll probably find Liam Wright there for me.
That's what I would do as well.
Well, sorry, if it was you guys, Fraser McWright, we know that. Sorry, but if not including,
he'd be starting, mate. If it was that,
yeah. Okay, Liam Wright. Yeah, I have to agree, but I wouldn't be upset if we had Rob Valentini. Just bring some extra punch. You know what I mean? Just have Valentini, Tupou coming on and smashing some people.
Valentini right now is the Shannon Frizzle of Australian rugby. How about show some physicality a few weeks in a row, then we can talk about Valentini.
Fair enough. All right, that's the back row. Look, we talked about 10, so for all three of us, O'Connor to slot straight back in, assuming he's fit. So the Hodge dilemma, for me, what this does is that I think the choices are as follows. Hodge either moves to 12, or he moves to 15, or he moves to the bench. Now, if he moves to 12, that would see Paisami go to the bench with Bataille at 13. I know both of you would like perhaps Paisami to start at 13, but I don't know. There's pros and cons to that.
I think it purely comes down to what that tactic is. Is that if that tactic is to, kick the shit out of the ball for, the early portion of the match and just play it out of your zone, you've got to get Hodge on there somehow. If it is to be very physical in tight, then Paisami's your man at 12. He will be the guy that can settle it in that inside channel as well. He slot into first receiver on a few occasions, last match out as well. But I mean, they're all realistic potentials here. But I think if your choice is to want to be physical in tight, I think you've got to have Paisami as your 12. Later on, maybe you bring Hodge into that 12 channel, whatever it might be, and add that extra pass to get the ball a little bit wider. But it'll be interesting to see who's at 15, if it's Banks again after a decent match last time out, or if Hodge takes that position. Because if you need a sneak in that boot, I mean, Banks does have a good boot, but if you need a sneak in that boot, that's a position Hodge could fill. But you just don't want to chop and change too much.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I think you can't go past the fact that every time the Wallabies backline has looked good this year, it's been with Paisami smashing people in attack and defence. I don't think there's any way you can move him at the moment, especially considering you're not moving him to 13. Bataille will be at 13. We all know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then that means that the only other option for him is if Hodgie is 15. And to be honest with you, I would rather they put him straight back to the bench. I think Banks played very well. I think he also offers a long kicking game as well. And he's the one that was doing the kicking for touch. So I think logic says Hodge just straight back to the bench and can fill in wherever is needed very adequately.
And sorry, DHP, whereabouts is he available?
For the squad for now, sadly, I think
he's gone for the squad. Okay, yeah, I had to say I agree. I thought long and hard about putting Hodge in at 12. I mean, Paisami is obviously very young, but God, he's almost been one of our better players, hasn't he? He's just been fantastic. And I'm very excited by the prospect of Chocobates and Paisami going at it at 12. It's going to be awesome.
I think you might find Geronimo de la Fuente back as well, though. I think he was pretty close to fit as well.
The hero. Very good. All right. So Hodgie could be unlucky and back to the bench. Now, the reason for that, I mean, look, obviously he's played wing before for the Wallabies, but I think going through the players that select themselves, Korobidi, your first pick. Done. Bataya, he's picking himself. Matt Phillip, picking himself. Nick White, picking himself. And for mine, I think the two players that have earned themselves the right for another start, Tom Wright has earned himself the right for another start. And good one. And look, the last player that I'm not sold on, but what do you guys think? Brandon Pangaromosa. Has he earned himself the right for another start as well?
I think so.
I think he has.
I'll see the stat and how many rucks he hits. To me, that's probably the one thing that we're not getting to see that is really important to his game. But I think around the set piece, he's really fixed a huge problem for us at the moment. But yeah, would love to know what else he's doing around the park because it's hard to see otherwise. Very good. All right.
Now, look, other players, do you want to see any of the new squad members in on the bench? We've got James Ram, Len Ikitau, Joe Powell.
No, they've all left, sorry. They're James Ram, Len Ikitau, Joe Powell, and Pony Fa'amasili have returned basically to their families, being released from the squad.
Right. That's my inability to read being proven.
It is.
Yeah. Now, who else do you want to see on the bench? For example, if we're having Hodge on the bench, who's your 23 jersey?
Oh, mate, that's a hard question.
Sprung it on them. Caught him deer in headlights.
I'm about a team in front of me, but Dungun is probably the other one that makes perfect sense to me. I think, he had a shocker a couple of weeks ago, but there's a lot to like about him. He's probably a pretty obvious option, and I wouldn't mind watching him just putting hits on Delgi or something like that.
Yeah. And are we saying as well, obviously, there's no chance of like a Simone or something sneaking in on the bench?
I don't think so when you've got Hodge there. Hodge is the guy that can fill a lot of different positions. I think you want an all-in, out and out, finisher, someone who can, lift the tempo and be quite exciting. And I think that'll be Bangunu, sorry.
Awesome. All right. Well, any other points on the Wallabies before we move to our deserto for some listener questions?
The only other thing I can think of is I think I heard a rumor of, and I was just trying to have a quick look, but I didn't, of Boffelli maybe being back as well. I think he was in amongst it.
Yeah, he was pretty close to being ready for the last game. They just didn't rush him back. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's not starting on the left wing.
And that would be in place of Imhoff as well, right?
In place of Imhoff, yeah. Who you could say was just stoked to beat the All Blacks. He's probably lost to them a number of times. So
yeah, and the funny thing is as well, I think, or not funny thing, but I think that adds a lot to their back three because Boffelli has that gigantic boot. Not that Sanchez isn't big anyway, but gigantic boot, and he's easily, surely the best in the air out of him, Carreras, and Elgi as well, who are both those small, zippy back three players. So I think that is really important for them to have someone with that kind of height and ability.
Yes, absolutely. He'd be best in the air on field for sure. You'd have to think. But all right, very good. It's going to be interesting.
What's your tip?
Tip for the game.
So I can't forget that.
I'm going to tip the Wallabies to win by not very much.
How much?
5 points.
Harry?
Yeah, the line's 4.5. So that's a juicy bet right there. Look, I'm going to bet the Wallabies as well, and it's not because I think that Argentina don't deserve the win. I just think it's going to be so hard to back up. If they play like this last week, I'm going to be wrong. Put it that way. But I'm going to go Wallabies by 8 points.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength. I think that's very emotionally draining, and not only for the starting players and the bench players, their whole squad. It's such a massive week for them. I'm sure they're straight back into training, but I think it might be a little too much 2 weeks in a row. They definitely proved me wrong with absolutely dominating that match this week. But I think it might just be too much 2 weeks in a row. They could quite well get up against Australia next time out. But I'll say Australia by, you've both done my two most likely scores. I'll say by 7.
Now, did you put some money on Argentina this week, though?
Sorry?
Did you put some money on Argentina this week for me?
Yeah, we'll do. Did you say 7, Harry, or 8?
8.
I'll say 7.
I just have this ominous feeling that we're going to be eating our words, though, which is
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I feel like we all have the inability to not back Australia. But anyway, moving on, that will take us to our deserto.